Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm gonna give it probably 2 or 3 minutes. We had a lot of registrants. We're so excited about doing this webinar today. So we'll give it a couple minutes and then I'll give everybody a quick tour of the webinar tool and then we'll get going because I know a lot of people are probably stepping out of practice clinic or work, those types of things. So we don't want to keep you for too long. Hey, everybody, welcome. If you're just joining, we're gonna give everybody a couple more minutes. Probably start about 3 after, so give a few more people time to trickle in, and then we'll get going. So we don't keep everybody too late after the top of the hour, so you can get back to your busy lives. All right, we'll give about one more minute, and then we'll get going. All right, we have a couple more trickling in. I'll give everybody just a really quick tour of the tool. Thank you so much. And it's always hard to find a good time for everybody across the country with different time zones. So this is being recorded too. Obviously, if you're not on here, you wouldn't know that, but everybody's going to get a link with the recording. It'll be, I think, live for about 7 days after. So you'll be able to watch it back, especially if you're not able to attend it live. We got a chat in here. So during the webinar, if you have any questions, my head of creative is going to moderate. So she'll be kind of paying attention to any questions that come in. We will open the floor to a Q&A for a couple minutes for anybody that doesn't have to hop off to get back to work or clinic. And then we'll have a poll in just a second too, which you should see appear in your sidebar too. So please vote. We're just trying to get an idea of kind of who feels prepared and at what level for AI. And so we'll go ahead and kind of jump in and get started. All right, so I'm really excited about this. Obviously, everybody across all businesses and industries has been heavily impacted by AI. We had an unprecedented year in 2025, and I think it will be even more so in 2026 as LLM search and GEO and AI SEO continue to evolve and we learn more. So we're going to kind of touch on a lot of these subjects, obviously specific to medical practices and local SEO in particular. How have these changes impacted us in healthcare? What are we seeing across our clients, across the industry that you can use to get an edge in AI? And we're going to go over some of the key components in your website, things that are tried and true that we're still doing and things that are new. On top of that, which is one of my favorite things, is what tools are we using that again is going to help you get an edge as even the tools are trying to learn and keep up and implement AI. And then, like I mentioned, we're going to open up a Q&A. And today I also have Tommy joining me. She is my CMO. She's got 25 years of healthcare marketing specific experience. So I'm excited to have her as my co-presenter today. And we're going to kind of go back and forth as we go through all of this material. So we got the poll up. We'll keep it up for a few more minutes as we kind of get rocking and rolling. Thank you, everybody that's voted so far. And all right, Tommy, I'm going to hand it off to you to kind of set the stage for everything that we're about to go through.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Justin. And hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Like Justin said, we know AI is doing something. What is it doing exactly? So as far as reshaping healthcare discovery, so we're talking about searches, right? Online searches, people looking for medical providers, looking for clinics, looking for healthcare brands. So there's 5 things here up on the slide. The first thing is obvious. We're seeing new AI platforms on the rise, potential patients, using platforms that didn't even exist a few years ago. search engine assistants like Google Gemini, Microsoft Bing Copilot, and large language models, what we call LLMs, that's ChatGPT and Perplexity. They're very, very commonly used now for healthcare searches. And the other thing we're seeing is generative answers. What these models do is, instead of, when somebody does a search, instead of giving you just a simple list of website links, these models generate an answer of their own themselves. They're not literally copy and pasting something. So these are answers from their training data and from their pulling live information from the internet. The other thing we're seeing changing is queries and journeys. So many of these platforms, they have little microphones, right? So people can speak the search. So we're seeing longer queries, more complicated, detailed queries. So whereas in the past, somebody might have just, looked for a certain specialist, now they may ask for, can you give me a pain management specialist who takes Medicare, who does a certain kind of injection, who can treat my spine pain? So long queries. And then the other thing that we're seeing is that the patient journey from, initial search through to becoming a patient, those journeys are changing, and we call them a pinball machine now, because there's so many different channels, and then there's all these AI platforms. So people might start in ChatGPT, and then if you show up in there, then they might go on Google and search for your brand and look for reviews. And so many complicated journeys to the front door of the medical practice. The other thing that we're seeing is a shift in the results format. So if you've used Google recently, you've probably seen AI at work, because what we're seeing at the top of the funnel, general queries, we're seeing a lot of AI overview answers. So if somebody Googles, knee pain or tummy tuck, or a general medical query, very often we'll see this AI overview that pushes all of the other website results down the page. When somebody's doing more of a local search, say they're searching for orthopedist near me or dermatologist near me, we are still seeing more traditional search engine results pages. That would be the maps showing with the practice websites listed there, and then underneath the maps, the organic results. So it depends what kind of query is being put into the LLM or the AI. The other thing that we're seeing is authority and selection. So about traditional search engine optimization, we talk a lot about Google using keywords, trying to match keywords. Google will also look at the domain authority of a site and the number and the quality of backlinks coming into the site. Whereas the LLMs, they have a slightly different weighted way of choosing who to include in the answers. The LLMs first will look at who has the best answer to the question, who has the most relevant, thorough answer. So that's what they're going to look for. And then they're going to look for this kind of second layer of authority. So they're going to go and check other websites to see, is the entity, the clinic or the brand or the person who answered this question, are they legitimate? Are they a good authority on the topic? Do I feel confident including them in the answer? So those are the things that we're seeing in 2025 into 2026 that are affecting search engine optimization strategy. And like Justin said on this next slide, everybody's talking about findability in AI. So let's just break it down a little bit here and look at this slide. This slide shows the number of health-related searches in the US on a monthly basis in millions. So even though these AI platforms are growing really quickly for people searching, they're still only a fraction of Google. Perplexity had 9 million health searches per month in 2025. ChatGPT had 45 million. Bing Copilot had 75 million. And Google had 550 million. So you can see, the scale of Google there. Google is still the battleground for search. So why are people talking so much about AI then, if Google is still the battleground? Well, one thing you may have noticed, we've noticed it at Entropy, and other practices have noticed it, is that when visitors go to a website from AI, they tend to convert at a higher rate. They become patients or they become clients at a higher rate. And that's because people tend to trust AI more than they trust traditional search engines. And that's because the AI sounds human, right? So that's important. The visitors coming from these platforms tend to convert at a higher rate. The other reason is that when we talk about these 550 million searches on Google, those searches are not necessarily being handled by the traditional search engine as we know it. They may, many of them, and we'll look at that in a minute, many of them be handled by Google's AI, Gemini. So when we're talking about winning in AI, we're talking about winning in Google as well, because Gemini is presenting the answers, and that's an AI platform. So what queries will trigger an AI overview? The intent of the query is highly influential in determining whether, so imagine you're on Google, right, and you're doing a query. If the query is very informational and general, we're seeing that up to 66% of the time, 2/3 of the time, an AI overview will show at the top. So what do we mean by that? Informational searches are, in the orthopedic area, it could be, why do my knees make a grinding sound when bending my knees, as I've done that search in the past. What causes blurry vision in one eye? How to know if a mole on a skin is a problem. Those are general healthcare informational searches. And so, most of the time, those are now showing AI overviews and all those results pushed down the page. Whereas if it is what we call a transactional or a bottom of funnel search, those are searches like find an orthopedic physician near me, or find a dermatologist in downtown San Francisco. Only about 10% of the time do AI overviews show for that. So the AI is deciding, are people looking to go somewhere to visit a doctor? And in those cases, in that 10%, bottom of funnel, the traditional search results will show the map with the website listing of the practices next to the map, and then the organic results under that. Very often you'll see just above the map, the sponsored results, the ads. So it depends on the intent query.
I think what's interesting here too,
what result is presented.
We're going to see this shift very rapidly, I think, in 2026, because it wasn't just 3 or 4 months ago that AI overview was being introduced into local search. So this is such a new thing, and as everybody knows, is evolving so quickly. But I mean, it wasn't until several months ago that you started seeing, and it wasn't fluid across all browsers, the testing of introduction into AI overview for local search and like listicle style search results. And so again, from the time we look at this to even 3 months from now, this could double, triple, it could go up to 75%. So it will start accelerating really quickly, which is again why everything we're going to talk about from a technical execution side of things really matters, because right now we're not seeing it as much, but we're also seeing it 5 times more than we were seeing it just a couple of months ago. And that's going to change every single month moving forward as things get like leveled up more and more.
Yeah, excuse me, for sure that, Justin. So what we've got on this slide here is we've got a couple of screenshots of the answers that are given, or the results that show when certain queries are made. And we're just using plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery here as an example. So the top screenshot that you can see, that's for the query, what is a tummy tuck? And you can see that answer shows an AI overview. And so what's interesting here is AI platforms, they're like people. They want to make a really good recommendation. You don't want to tell your friend to go to a really crappy restaurant, do you? So when AI answers these questions, it wants to make sure that the answer is truly authoritative. There's no spam or anything like that. And so a lot of the time, these, very high level queries are showing authoritative national sites like Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic. I've been seeing the UK National Health Service show up a lot here, highly authoritative, totally irrelevant for a US search. But the point is, that's an AI overview, and many times there are 0 clicks from this because the answer is completely there. And then sometimes there are these sites listed at the side, so very coveted spot there. The other screenshot shows a bottom funnel query. So the query typed here is plastic surgeon near me, tummy tuck.
Did we lose her? I think we lost her. Oh, we lost her. All right, I'll take over. Technology. So as she was saying, this is the bottom of the funnel. And again, like we talked about on the previous slide, we're not seeing as much AI overview, but that is accelerating very quickly. I did something recently with a reputation management tool, and that's one of the big things that they're talking about is even these directory listings are now greatly influencing what you're seeing listed at the top in AI overview, which again, go back to the summer and you weren't seeing it at all. But you're still seeing a heavy weight to more traditional SERP results in local, what we would consider bottom of the funnel, which is obviously very relevant to anybody with medical practice. And so that's what's really interesting. But again, that's changing, and it's going to change in these months. And so you got to be ready and set up for it. And again, kind of like what Tommy was saying is historically we've seen a few capture the mini, especially in information based, like we just saw on the previous slide. And those are the household names everybody knows: Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, either any of these like major reputable publications, high domain authority, and massive traffic. As we're seeing these shifts occur, though, we're actually seeing some queries that are starting to contain doctors that have context locally around some of these specific things, which again is really interesting and has not really been seen before, and is a reason why blog content and some of that long tail search query stuff is still very relevant, not the primary focus in local search, which again is what I talk about a lot and we'll go over in a minute. But we're also going to see blog traffic impacted substantially. And we've been talking about that for a couple of years as this has been coming. Most sites that rely heavily on information-based blog traffic are probably already seeing 15, 20, 30, 40% dips in organic traffic. That is because most of the information is now being delivered in AI overview. So the customer or the patient doesn't have to take their journey onto the website to read the full material. They can get most of what they need in AI overview. But that to say, if you want to be relevant, whether you're a Mayo Clinic or in this case, you're a medical practice that has an information-based search that's shown up for a blog, or same with AI overview in local, as it continues to grow, if you're not doing the right things, you're not creating the right content, you're not implementing the right structures, you're not going to be showing up. So even if you're going to get impacted by a drop in organic search, you're not going to be in whether it's your map pack or listed in that AI overview influencing search if you're not doing the right things. So it's kind of this chicken and egg thing. Like everybody's going to see their organic search go down, but your visibility is still going to be there. And that visibility is going to be very transactional in terms of leading to high quality patient generation. And so you got to keep that in mind, as like we may see numbers impacted, but at the end of the day, if you want to still be in the game and have at bats to be able to get patients through the door, all the stuff we're talking about is super, super important, or nobody's going to find you. And again, we're going to go over these and kind of break them down. But what's most important, obviously, entities, and that's kind of structured data, schema markup, those types of things we're going to get to. Important, and it's interesting because it was really important 5 to 10 years ago. Even when I was first getting into SEO a dozen years ago, I remember like old school, like creating schema markup and like a schema markup generator. Obviously, you can do all that stuff at scale, but now you're seeing, because LLM, as it's evolving, is still using a lot of that to really understand who these websites are, what the specific content is representing. Are these FAQs? Are they to answer long tail search query questions, to be represented in a different area of search, or are they information on the page? And then obviously all of this content still rules the day. Because without the content, if you've ever listened to my stuff, if you want to rank for it, you need a page for it. Without that stuff, doesn't matter what schema markup or structured data that you have on a page, if you're not following that EAT, which everybody's talking about now, and having authoritative, trustworthy, awesome killer content that's better than the rest, you're not going to be in the search game anyways. Again, schema markup, you're hearing a lot about now, if you're kind of following along this AI journey, or if you're new to it. Schema markup is basically code that you can wrap around different things on your website to kind of dumb it down, that kind of tell, in this case, large language model platforms or Google or Bing, exactly what this page or person or thing represents on a certain area of your website. Like if it's a location page, designating it as a location, putting the address and everything, which I'll show you an example of schema markup in a second. If it's a physician bio page, designating that, and particularly even possibly the type of physician, those types of things too. It just kind of spells it out for them, because the last thing you want is guesswork, whether it's what we've been talking about forever with Google, or it's the LLM search, AI overview type of thing. You really just want to hand it to them in as plain English, so to speak, as possible. Here's an example of like a designated organization type or procedure type. And this example, kind of, if you look at that visible page content, is really telling a search engine exactly what this is. This arthroscopic knee surgery is a medical procedure. So if somebody's looking for this medical procedure, this should warrant an opportunity to show up in those search results. And then, Tommy, I'm going to hand it off to you to kind of talk through. Actually, let me see. Nope, we got. Yeah, this is yours, actually, Tommy, to kind of walk through an example of the content structure, and then how you can use schema markup to tell LLM search exactly what this is.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yeah, the age-old SEO question is, how do I get the balance between writing for people and writing for these machines? Because at the end of the day, if the machines don't understand the page content, the people aren't going to see it anyway. I mean, that's unfortunately just the way it is at the moment. So how do we make a page relatable, but so that machines easily understand it? We see many practices wanting to use a page headline like, "We fix sports injuries quickly so you can get back in the game." So really nice headline, but it's quite ambiguous for machines. They just don't understand enough about you and your practice and what you do from this. So we can use this in the content because humans like it. We just would not make it the official page title. In the official page title, we would want to choose entities for the page that educate the machine and people. So if you look at the second paragraph on this slide, if you can see it well enough, hopefully you can read it. There are at least 5 entities in there, and it's totally readable by humans as well. We perform arthroscopic ACL reconstruction for anterior cruciate ligament tears. Our orthopedic surgeons specialize in knee and sports medicine procedures at Total Ortho Medical Center in Colorado. So that's a very entity dense. So that's obviously not going to be your title, but you can pick entities out of there and place them in the title. So a great option is to, yes, include that kind of content that's engaging for people, but underneath add that more entity dense to explain it both to people and machines. So use them together on the page. So when you're writing a page, whether it's, conditions, treatment, services page, and we're talking about the page that people will actually read. When you're writing that page, we want to make sure that that content is easily readable by AI. This goes beyond just, sprinkling keywords through the page. So this is a basic guide to, sorry, I'm just going to unchat my chat here. Developing content for the page. Machines and people, there's a lot of overlap here, right? How machines read is intuitively good for people. They like structured content that starts with a broad introduction and then just dives deeper into the topic. They like clear headings and short, scannable paragraphs of up to about 300 words. So good practice to do just like really long paragraphs of text on your page. You want to break those paragraphs up and put titles, headings in between. They also love questions, real FAQs that people would ask with your answer written in about 45 to 80 words. And a good way to find FAQs to include is, if you're writing about a topic, go on Google and type a question in, like, what causes clicking in my knee? Scroll down the page. Very often, the AI will include other similar questions that are related that other people asked, and including those questions with your own answers is a really good content section in your page. Write it in natural human language. I think Justin's probably you're gonna comment on people using AI to generate tons of content. Got penalized in the last algorithm update, so don't do it. Use your AI strategically for things that it is good at, and write about your own expertise with authority. When you write about any topic, whether it's, a knee replacement, or we're using dermatology a lot, or lens replacement in an eye, make it a very thorough, deep, broad content page, because that will show that you are a topical authority on that topic. As far as multi-location groups, Justin, I'm going to hand this to you. What is the best content strategy for multi-location groups?
Yeah, I think this is I think one of the biggest center points strategically of if you're a single location, obviously your advantage is you can go all in geographically from a ranking standpoint. So you really need your homepage carries the weight of the primary who you are. Are you a med spa, an orthopedic clinic, a rheumatology practice, whatever it is in Austin, Orlando, so on and so forth. And then that carries through all of your primary conditions and treatments pages. It's very linear. It's very straightforward. Where the complexity comes in is when you have more than especially 3 locations, you really need to be systematic in your approach to be able to rank in each of those geographical areas that you need to rank for to drive patients through, because it's all about winning near me search at the end of the day. If you've got brick and mortar locations, you need to be driving near me search and showing up both in Google Business, AI overview, and then obviously general organic search. And I've got kind of 2 scenarios laid out here. And again, this is evolving, and you're seeing a lot of material, especially on the bottom one. This top one, this is really our tried and true. This is our bread and butter. This is how we approach it. If you come to us as a multi-location organization with a bunch of brick and mortars and Google businesses attached to that, and all the things that you need, like reputation and reviews and all of that stuff, the best setup there is you need individual location pages for every primary location that you have, surgical center, those types of things. And obviously the Google businesses to match, fully built out with all the NAP information, citations, which we'll get into in a minute. And then that integrated into your location pages. And then you have all of your treatment pages, both your primaries, and if you're orthopedic, you have these pillars like hip, knee, back, shoulder, and then all the sub pages. Again, if you want to rank for it, you need a page for it. And I'm going to show you that example in just a second. But that is the kind of critical structure for most tried and true multi-location groups. that are regionally constrained. It gets a little bit different if you're like a really broad facing franchise. But that's kind of a conversation for a different day. But it's also critical with these location pages that they actually impact search. The only way they're going to impact search is if they're an actual page and not a glorified contact page that's just Google business profile, name, address information, and it's not actually optimized for your primary who you are and where you're at. So you need to build that page out. And one of the most important things is interlinking. You want to interlink to all the primary service pages or treatment and conditions pages. So it creates a really good interlinking strategy. The same goes for the physicians or providers that are in that location. So that's kind of, and again, that's not changed much over the last couple of years. What's changed a little bit, but not much, but it's actually helped out, I think, a lot in LLM search is if you're not geo-constrained as much. So say you're at a state level, this has been in practice a lot. Obviously, it's a little newer to the medical industry since COVID with virtual or telehealth, which typically lends itself to a state level optimization strategy, which can be tricky, especially when you don't have Google business profiles tying you down to specific locations. How do you handle that? You kind of approach it like I say, personal injury attorneys have been doing that for a long time. They typically can reach throughout an entire state that they're licensed in and they're able to practice. The same thing goes obviously in the medical space. So what we're seeing a lot of is more of what I call a location page hub and spoke approach. So that is if you're trying to rank in geographical areas, but you don't have a physical brick and mortar there to help you out, you are at a disadvantage to a med spa or an orthopedic practice that does have a physical location. So the best way to address that is geographical location-based pages that are very robust in sending location signals to those areas, and then build out treatment pages. And you can see the URL example is /location/treatment. Everything needs to be super organized, so it's very crawlable and following a very specific link structure. And then on those treatment pages, you're linking back to location, primary top treatment page, and on the location page, you're ranking to all the sub treatment pages. So again, there's a very easy to understand network. The biggest thing is people go crazy with this and it gets very disorganized, very disjointed, and very unnecessary. Only build content in a hub and spoke approach that is justified, that it means there's enough search volume and it's competitive enough. If you have 50 treatments, you probably don't need to take that and times it by the 10 things and create 500 different sub pages. It's overkill. And you also don't want to roll that out all at once because that will come off very spammy to Google and the LLM search. So it still needs to be rolled out very methodically with time in mind. So you do not end up not getting a bunch of that stuff indexed or it's very low quality. The other huge thing is this is not a copy and paste approach. And don't use AI to accomplish this if you can. 70% of it needs to be focused on content. It needs to be varied as much as possible. If you actually want it to impact local search, is probably one of the most important things. Here's an example of structured data that I mentioned. I won't go all the way through it, but you can see going back to that arthroscopic ACL reconstruction example that we had, it really spells out every piece of it. And again, these things are important. Not as important as the content stuff we're talking about, but creating an LLM text file, kind of like what we used to use robot text files, it helps spell out, this is all the content on our site. This is the content that's most important. And this, it kind of, again, hands all these LLM platforms an exact blueprint of your website and what's most important. So don't forget about these things. But again, you got to make sure your content house, your reputation house, all these things, which Tommy's about to go through, are that is all those ducks are in a row, or putting schema markup or having rich snippets on your website is not going to really make any difference. All right, Tommy, you want to go through this? Oh, wait, sorry. Actually, this was mine. My bad. So local entity strength, we talked about it. That kind of is tied to authority. Domain authority is huge. That's why we do backlink building. It's why you will struggle when you're starting out. When you buy a new domain, set up a new website, and it's kind of a build it and they will come, but nobody comes. It's because you don't have trust established, you don't have domain authority, you don't have page authority, and those things are not working in your favor early on. Over time, you naturally build backlinks, you naturally build trust, you naturally build reviews, and that authority comes along. Backlinks can help shorten that time. But again, if you're competing against a group with a 35 domain authority out of 100 and you've got a 10 or 12, some of the things we're talking about, like having better content than them, you're still going to struggle to rank over them. So authority is really, really critical in the kind of grand scheme of things. It's a little less in local than in national search, and local backlinks matter a little more than they do in national search, but that's huge. The other side is obviously your Google business profile carries massive weight in near me search. And obviously the reputation on that is probably the thing that impacts most. You've got relevancy, proximity, and reviews. Obviously, if I'm looking for a med spa, is it a med spa and is it their primary category? Are they anywhere within 10 miles or so? And then the most important at the top of that list is your reputation. And that's why you need to have a good reputation program in place, because again, not only does it impact this, but I'm going to show you in a second how much it impacts AI overview and especially LLM search. This is obviously big. I won't dive too much into it. Most people know now Google business profiles are huge. You hear a lot about NAP, which is name, address, phone number, consistency. You hear a lot about citation building. Google business at the end of the day is what matters most. So that has not been diluted in this, and neither has reputation attached to that by any stretch of the imagination. I still think people are caught up a little too much in the citation building game. I think unless you're bringing a new physician on or you're opening the doors of a new location, those are good opportunities to do aggressive citation building for a couple of months. At the end of the day, you're not going to bring a patient through the door, which is what all this is about, on city search. They may go to one of the physician profiles like Health Grades or Vitals or US News, those types of things, like the really heavy hitters. And so it's kind of like, keep it simple, stupid. If it's coming up in search, whether it's a provider directory listing or it's something for branded, make sure it's claimed up to date and everything's right on there, because those are the things that really matter at the end of the day. At the end of the day, the obscure directory that's on the 9th page that nobody ever go on and gets no site traffic has really very little to no influence at all over how you're going to perform an LLM search. This is, I think, really big. And some people have already asked a question about reviews, integration on your website, as well as Google Business Profile. Real big. So like I did a search for like best dermatology clinics that treat acne. I'm in the Orlando market. You can see every one of these. What does ChatGPT lead with first? Ratings. It is looking at ratings, and then it's looking at correlation to treatment offering through content on their website, and probably context of reviews that are listed on their Google business profile and listed on their website, on their physician bio pages. It's looking for those keywords to correlate. Good reviews, highly recommended. Again, still majorly influenced by even what you're seeing in regular SERP results. Like if I did a Google search and a ChatGPT search, I bet you these especially the top 3, mirror each other fairly consistently still. So, but integrating it on your website, on the provider pages, your reviews, and on your location pages, and wrapping that with schema markup. So Google and LLM search clearly understand these are reviews on this page, really help if you're going to win searches like this. And then I'll hand it off to you now, Tommy, to kind of walk through some of the other important authority things that we've even seen really come into play, and even how we're citing material on pages on websites.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Authority, when we talk about that, is huge. Really, really strong signal for Google, especially in medical and financial websites. These are what we call YM, YL websites. Actually, not our term, Google's term. Your money or your life websites are held to very high quality standards by Google. So basically, the AIs have just copied that standard, right? Because I mentioned earlier, they want to do a good job for humans. They want to make good recommendations. So everything on the website, just think of it this way. All of your assets, that is, everything that your providers have done, everything that your brand has done, throw them at your website, because the AI platforms are going to look for authority. And authority means how many procedures have you done? How many years have you been in practice? Professional and academic affiliations. Are you teaching? Are you a published author? Did media refer to you? Have you presented at a conference? Things like that. They're all assets and you should get them on your website. The other thing is they also check, like Justin said, third-party sites, select third-party sites. So make sure those are all up to date. Health grades, Google Business Profile, WebMD. And then another signal to AI platforms as to whether include you in the result is a technical signal, which we can see on the next slide, Justin. On the technical side of things, AI, they just won't cite a website, won't include it in the results if they think it won't provide a good user experience. I'm saying them. I also mean Google AI overviews, Google results. If they think that when the user gets to the website, the site's going to be slow, it's going to be hard to get around, not very usable, they're not going to include it in the results, even if your answer and the other signals, like Justin mentioned, are an absolute match to the query. They're going to say, this is going to be a nightmare when they get there, we're not going to include it. So technical, it's a very strong overlap between what we've done traditionally in SEO. This has always been part of SEO, and it continues to be for AI SEO. So let's talk about tools, Justin. Do you want to talk about tools with us?
Definitely. And there's a lot out here. And I think what's interesting is everything's evolving in real time. These are some of the ones that we really lean into and rely on for various different reasons that I'll go through. And why we have begun to rely, especially on the one that's the third bullet. But Rate Math is, if anybody is familiar with WordPress websites, we build mainly in WordPress. Yoast has been around forever. Yoast does a really good job too. They were, I think, a little bit behind the 8 ball comparatively to Rate Math to introduce a lot of AI-focused tools. We found Rate Math to do an exceptional job. Obviously, we manage lots of websites, so we need to be able to do this at scale, do it very quickly, get good analysis back, and be able to implement at a very, very high pace, especially when we're trying to implement this across tons of websites as things evolve. So Rate Math, if you're on WordPress, I think it's one of the arguably best and most important tools. You can do like your title tags and all that stuff. It's got a really cool bells and whistles, but it just allows you to do a ton of the most important things that we've covered today, like schema implementation, rich snippets, FAQ, rich snippet implementation on page, which is huge. Like we have a really tight process about that. When you go and you implement FAQs, how do you wrap those so they end up getting implemented into search results as well and impact the page more? You can create LLMS text files. You can create instant crawling or instant visibility. I just went blank on the name. Direct integration with Bing through their webmaster tools and create an API key. So every time you publish a new page, it'll automatically get instant indexed into Bing or get crawled with more high regularities. And obviously that's important, especially with ChatGPT and its influence with Bing search results. SEMrush has been around forever. We've always leveraged it. I think, again, there's several tools out here. Other people could argue that they're AI visibility tools do just as good of a job. This is what we've always used, so I wanted to recommend it. On the AI visibility side of things, it does a really good job for us being able to look under the hood and audit potential clients or new clients, but also track visibility growth, queries that they're showing up for, and where we need to focus on improvement based on volume of those search queries. So it gives a lot of insight and visibility into where are we at, set a baseline, and then where do we want to be and what we're showing up for that has real potential to drive new patients, and then obviously put a program together for content, backlinks, all that stuff. To move our clients up the rankings on AI search tools. These two I put in here. These are actually newer in the game for us, and there's several out there. We've vetted both of these. Both I think have pros and cons. This really hit home the tail end of last year. Not sure how many people know there was a very large and very volatile Google algorithm update that rolled out around the 11th or 12th, of course, right before Christmas, which was really nice. And a lot of it centered, obviously, more, call it through the 90 days once it's rolled out. And it didn't finish rolling out to the beginning of this month. So again, best we can see is the wobbles and what's happened and what's been impacted, and then what we can deduce for the targets of that algorithm update. The big part of that algorithm update was around AI content generation, and putting more weight on EAT and the authority and trustworthiness and the structures of content and the originality of that content. A little bit of Google kind of talking out of both sides of its mouth is like, use our AI generation tools, but if you do, we're going to catch you and we're going to punish you. But websites we saw impacted are ones that have leveraged AI tools to create content at scale and leaned into them too much. And these two tools do a really good job of trying to sniff that out. Again, they'll continue to get better as they get more data, but you can use these to crawl a website and find out, is a bunch of this content triggering what we feel like is an all high probability AI generated content. And again, over time, that is not what we want, and you will get punished. And we did see people get hit pretty hard in this last algorithm update, and are scratching and clawing to try to figure out why and try to figure out how they're going to bounce back. And a lot of it has to do with, you're probably going to have to go in, roll your sleeves up, and write some of that content that was written by AI. Then we wanted to get into kind of two questions that we hear a lot, myth versus reality. So I'm going to kind of pose these to Tommy, and I'll jump in a little bit. Does HIPAA compliance, obviously HIPAA is huge. I mean, our whole team is HIPAA compliantly trained. Everything we do for our clients is HIPAA compliant. So I mean, everybody that's in this knows how important it is. Does that add any visibility or ranking signals to LLMs or AI overview, Tommy, that can help in terms of sending trust scores?
Interestingly, this is a myth. I mean, in theory, you'd think, wow, I'm telling the AI and Google that I'm HIPAA compliant, so I should get. No, we don't have any evidence to say that content will be prioritized just because there's a HIPAA compliance badge on the page. So that's a myth, but it is an important reassurance signal for humans. So, that's important. And also, clearly, if you breach HIPAA in any way, you're going to have zero internet visibility because your site's going to go down. So the caution here is, don't do it for AI, but check your forms for HIPAA compliance, because if you haven't got HIPAA compliant hosting and you're using forms with an open field and somebody types in their condition, that's become HIPAA. So just make sure you're following HIPAA, but AI is not the reason to follow it.
And then what about kind of the theory, if I've been ranking number one on Google, should I be ranking number one in AI for the same query?
This is a really interesting one. We get this question a lot. And the answer for this in healthcare is, this is mostly true, yes. There was a question in the chat about where are our data sources, and I've realized we haven't put those on the slide. So I think we can add the data sources in the webinar notes, which we'll do. But most of them come from very highly authoritative search engine optimization sources, publications, and first-party agency research. Again, I don't have the data source for this, but across generative engine studies, generally, there's about 54% overlap. But in healthcare, this actually jumps to 75%, meaning that if AI does cite anybody, does include them in the results, about 75% of the time, they'll include top-ranked websites that rank in top on Google. So yeah, I mean, it's mostly true in healthcare, but like Justin said earlier, things are changing so much, so quickly in this space, and we're watching it. And this is one that we'll definitely keep watching through 2026.
I think this, again, kind of all feeds through. LLM search is still evolving. What we can and can't do to optimize is still evolving. And even the introduction, somebody just asked about paid search strategies, even the introduction, what's coming down the pipe is we're probably going to start seeing ads in ChatGPT. So like that's evolving too. But again, the historical tried and true is like, if you perform well in Google, you're going to perform well in Bing. It's difficult to do Bing specific optimization strategies. It always has been. It's a little bit more exact match and literal because the algorithm's not as sophisticated as Google, but the same thing holds true. Like if it flows through Google, it's going to flow through Bing generally, and it's going to flow and show up in LLM search too. So the things that you're doing, and honestly, the lion's share is still through Google. So it's a lot of focus around creating authority, creating a powerful reputation, structuring the content on your site right, and where it makes sense for Google and LLM search to understand. And if we're focused on that as our North Star, as we continue to move forward, it's going to translate to strong performance in LLM search. And then obviously we'll continue to learn more and more and more as new data rolls out and these LLM search models continue to evolve and grow. Kind of with that, I know we're about 5 minutes over where I wanted to be. I wanted to keep it at 45. So I know some people may have to jump, but I wanted to open the floor a little bit to some Q&A for anything that we have not. So Michelle, and I'll kind of work up. Tommy kind of answered it, but yeah, so there is absolutely no data historically that says the more money that you spend in paid search, the better you're going to perform in SEO. That's just simply not true. The other reality, though, is in competitive markets or when you need to supplement organic search in terms of patient volume generation and get people booked, especially if you're new, because the reality is, like, if somebody comes to me and is like, I'm a brand new practice, I open my door in Miami and I'm a plastic surgery group, I'm like, there's really not any way you're going to rank effectively or competitively for 6 to 12 months. So what do you do to bring in patients? I mean, most people can't survive just hemorrhaging cash for that long. That's where search ads come in. And that's why they can be so incredibly effective. Now, there's been a ton of change. Probably a lot of people even sitting here that leverage search ads for their practice have may seen a quality reduction or even a volume reduction in their leads in 2025. That's been pretty consistent across the board because of some changes in implementation that has happened on Google side of things, even just as basic as broad and phrase match and exact match. But yeah, search ads are a super, super effective strategy to supplement your SEO side of things. Again, I'm kind of one of those more old school, especially because I was kind of born out of the SEO side, so to speak, is what I fell in love with first from a marketing perspective. So I always say you can't beat SEO from an ROI perspective long term. So you never want to take your eye off that prize. Realistically, some people, you got to invest in paid search, and I never would say don't do that. But you don't want to be reliant on it, because even a lot of it, the industry and a lot of terms have gotten 20, 40, 60, 80, 150% more expensive and more competitive. And that's not going to change. That's how Google makes their money. So you're going to be spending more money and probably getting less leads over time. So you want to establish authority in SEO in the long run. All right. And then we got, who else? Illustrations, imagery, absolutely. AI, Google love mixed media. And the longer you can improve on-page time, so mixed media helps with Eat, Trust, Authority. It shows that you're given a bunch of different material to a reader. It also can influence on-page time, arguably one of the most important things. If you think about it in Google's mind, if it's returning a search, it wants to know that they nailed that search. What better way to say they nailed that search than comparative on-page time analysis for the top 3 search results? And that's how you can end up flipping from third to first, is if you create a bunch of video content that supports each section of one of your providers talking about what causes frozen shoulder, how do you treat frozen shoulder, like all that kind of stuff. You're going to probably end up in first over time if people are engaging with those videos too, and staying on the page longer. There's like no better way to win that battle. All right, let's see. Patient testimonials, Michelle, we kind of covered. Maybe I can cover that a little bit more, but it's not been diluted how important patient testimonials, reputation management, integration of those Google business profiles, as well as like if you have a review generation plugin or something that has schema markup on it, that'll pull those feeds in from various different third-party sources on your physician bio pages, as well as locations. It's going to greatly help with ranking both in AI as well as Google. It's going to add schema markup. And the other side of it is, outside of this, at the end of the day, we're trying to get patients, and patients read reviews, as most people know. And so having that know, like, and trust social proof on the website is absolutely critical. So there's multiple different reasons why you should have patient testimonials embedded in your website and focus on growing your reputation. All right. Anybody got anything else? Good. We'll hang
I
around.
think we got one, Justin. It's an early on question. He's asking, how does it help a new practice against local strong competitors?
Yeah, and I think it was
New
it was a
practice.
mid conversation when we were kind of setting the stage up, Rakesh. So happy to get into that a little bit more. But again, if you want to rank competitively locally, you got to follow these things. You got to have good URL structures, really good content, high domain authority, focus on reputation. If you're not tethered locally, you're going to have to focus on kind of the hub and spoke approach of content development that I talked about. You want to get local links as well from local publications too, because they send really strong local signals. And again, at the end of the day, it's strength and authority of content. Like plastic surgery arguably is one of the most competitive. Breast augmentation is a good example, probably one of the most competitive things that plastic surgeons are fighting for. The person that ranks number 1 or number 2 has probably got a thesis or a dissertation on that. That's 3,500 words and covers every single part of the process of doing that procedure and the outcomes. If you slap up a page with 500 words, forget about it. You can do a bunch of backlinking. It's probably not going to be competitive in the long run. So again, not a lot has changed from that aspect. Now, structures of it and other things you can do to help yourself in answering these questions is where things get a little bit different over the last 6 months. But at the end of the day, that's a backbone of this. All right.
Agree.
I think another 10 or 15 seconds, but I wanted to thank, I know we got people jumping off. I wanted to thank everybody. And we got a lot of people that registered for this webinar that were not able to attend. So if you came live, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to Tommy and I talk. Hopefully you found it informative as things evolve and change. We'll be doing multiple of these this year, kind of updates especially. I'm really excited. We're relaunching our podcast. If you've ever historically listened to our podcast, we've been on about a 2-year hiatus since my second child was born. So I'm really thrilled to get that back going with Tommy. And so everybody stay tuned for more content. We'll be having a lot of conversations around this topic as things evolve through the year. And obviously reach out to us if there's anything that we can do or help with the growth of your practice or healthcare organization. And again, I thank everybody for the time today for attending. And I didn't leave this up, but I'll leave this up. If you are interested in connecting with us, you can scan this QR code really quick. And I'm on LinkedIn. Tommy's on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect with you over there as well. And again, thank you everybody for taking time to join. I'll leave this up for just a second longer and then we will jump off.
Thank you, everyone.